Hi, my name is Bill Mullins. I'm Superintendent of Schools here at Marysville USD 364. Purpose for tonight is we're just going to take you on a quick tour through the buildings and show you some of the highlights and some of the challenges and some of the proposed solutions with the bond issue that's up for election here on November 3rd. We just want you to see kind of some of the things we deal with on a daily basis and also learn more about what we're trying to propose in terms of the solutions. We are currently in Miss Hout's biology classroom, and the view that you're seeing right now looks exactly the same as the 1950 yearbook picture that was taken in this exact same room. The only difference is the desks which are in front of us, those were replaced in the early 1960s, or right around 1960, 1970. But outside of that, this room is essentially the same as it was in 1950. One of the big changes was this room used to be a lab-only classroom. The science classes were actually held next door in a classroom there, and the students came only over here for labs. Over the course of the years, this has become the classroom and the lab room itself. We're concerned about when we look at this from a size standpoint, this room is just too small for current science standards. The room should really be about twice the size that it is to meet those pieces. Some of the other things in here, just worried about the electricity. Whether we have enough electrical outlets to cover all of the work. If you look back in the storage room back there, it's about a third the size it needs to be in terms of science storage. So we feel like we can really upgrade this science learning area by getting more space and updating this to a modern science facility. Okay, we're now in Ms. Wall's chemistry classroom. This classroom really, what we can find when we look at old annuals, this was kind of changed or updated maybe a little bit. Right around 1970 was the last time anything was done in this room according to what we can find. Again, the big issues here is this is a chemistry classroom and a lab room. It's currently about 1,000 square feet, maybe just a little bit more than that. The regulations call for, if we were to have a combination classroom, it really needs to be about 1,500 square feet. So we're short by quite a bit of square footage area in here. The same issues that we have in the other room as far as not having enough storage room also applies here. We probably need about 3 times the amount of storage that we have in order to hold all of the equipment. There's some other things in this room from a safety standpoint that are pretty important. If you look over here to this emergency shower, there's no drain on the floor, so there's nowhere for the water to go. That's used in case students have a chemical spill or something and they need to go wash themselves off. Right now they can pull it, it works, but there's nowhere for the water to go. And there's also an eye wash fountain, which is in a cabinet over here. And right now, if a student was to get something in their eyes, they're supposed to be wearing safety goggles, but if they were supposed to get something in their eyes, they've got to pull the thing out of the cabinet, activate it, and again, there's nowhere for the water to drain. So we're worried about, if a student was to have an injury to their eyes, how long would it take them to get all that out? How long would it make sure to work? And then where's the water going to go? Okay. Some other issues in this room. There's a wall back behind us here that we have trouble getting paint to stick to because there's so much groundwater from the outside. This is right here in the basement. So we can repaint it, but the paint doesn't stick. Okay. Other issues, there's been some termite issues in both science classrooms, and just some other things along the way. There's some electrical outlets in here that don't work. Just things that we just need to overall update and improve.
We are in the basement of the high school, and this serves primarily as a storm shelter. But as you can see when you pan through this room, you've got electrical conduit running along the roof. We are also located right next to the chemistry lab that has all the chemistry storage in it with a lot of chemicals. And part of this project's focus is safety and security for our kids. And having this serve as a storm shelter that's less than adequate, especially with it being located by the chemistry room, can be a very dangerous situation. We're again in the high school basement area where we currently have over here the high school chemistry lab, classroom, and storage unit. If the bond passes, this area, along with Mr. Petrie's room right here in front of me, will become the new art center. What the art department will gain is nearly twice the space that they currently have, and more importantly, it'll bring all those kids that are going outside the main building back into the main building, so they won't be transitioning outside throughout the day. So, and then as you go down this hallway, we were down here in the biology room earlier. Mr. Mullins discussed the biology room. What we would do with this space if the bond passes is this would all become special ed classrooms, so we'd gain space there as well.
This is one of the smaller classrooms that we have here. There are multiple rooms like this. We just want to demonstrate one to kind of show you the size of how much of the room is taken up by desks for students to sit in, how narrow the walkway is for teachers or students to try to get through. You can imagine if there's backpacks and students sitting here, how difficult it is to get around and how difficult it is for a teacher to get to the back of the room to try to help a student if they need a little one-on-one time. All right, now we're backstage at the auditorium. This is the rigging that was here originally when the facility was built in 1938. They still have the same ropes and everything connected to it that holds all of the curtains and stuff over the stage. And there are also a bunch of weights that are being suspended up in the air that help hold this in place that can be a definite issue. Plus you can see these are kind of out in the open. And so if you've got people coming on and off stage during performances, how this is in the way and could be a potential hazard. There's also a lack of storage back here that they hope to address with this issue.
One of the biggest issues with the high school gym is the distance between the out of bounds on all four corners. The wall is so close that during a basketball game, there's been many of boys and girls run right into the wall. The space just isn't there. When you're seated on the front row, your legs are actually on the court. Again, you have many accidents of players coming in, diving for a loose ball, and they're going to run into the patrons that are sitting there. The steps where you go up into the bleachers are 7 inches in depth. They really need to be 10 inches in order to hit state mandates. There's another step that you'll see in here that is probably about 1.5 feet tall, that if you're an older person and you don't have the range of movement, you cannot get up and sit on those bleachers. Another deal is if you're in a wheelchair. This gym is not accessible for you to watch a game in here because there's no place for that wheelchair to go. You will also see that the steps leading down to the basement, there are no protection. So if someone is running and going after a loose ball, they can fly right down the steps and into a door. Should the bond issue pass, the gymnasium would become 2 floors. The top would be science classrooms, and the bottom would be 6 additional classrooms.
Okay, right now we're in what's considered to be the basement of the junior high. This is where students go for a storm shelter on the junior high side of the building. Actually, they go into the locker room. You'll see that area has windows, other things that are in there that are not really good for a storm shelter. The other thing about this side is it's not handicap accessible. So if you had someone that was in a wheelchair or on crutches or anything like that, it's going to be very difficult for them to get down to this area. Okay, in this area I want to talk to you about the proposed activity center, which this would be the gym area that would replace the old high school gym, that if the bond passes, we would do some work in this area. Basically, from about where I'm standing to the west would be torn off and repurposed. We would build 2 stories down here. We would have storm shelters that would be handicap accessible. We would have some classroom space. We would also have gym space that would be large enough to have 2 practices at the same time. This would allow our students to get home earlier at night. So instead of having practices early and late, we could run both boys and girls practice at the same time, get kids home earlier to be with their families, do their homework. This area would include, we're proposing a walking track. Really from where we're standing, this level would walk out into a kind of a concourse area around the new gymnasium. And so we would actually walk down to your bleachers, all right? So what you would really be doing, if you're moving back and forth between the 2 gyms, you've got 2 children playing, you're probably 25, 30, less than 50 feet between the gyms. It's on the same level, makes it very good for those that have mobility issues. And you can go back and forth between the games, all right? There would be 3 classrooms on the upper level, also a weight room, fitness room that would serve as a storm shelter as well. The proposed plans on the bottom level call for girls' locker rooms, which would be quite a bit bigger than the current ones. Right now it's not big enough for all of our girls. So the new girls' locker rooms would be big enough for both junior high and senior high girls. It would give a place for visitors and opponents. Those would also serve as storm shelters. We'd have a wrestling room. It's about twice the size of the current wrestling room. Again, we could use that as storm shelter space. There'd be more storage for PE things down there. There would be an officials locker room, and there would be a training room to deal with our injured athletes. All right. Back behind us here, we have 3 classrooms that would be repurposed as part of this bond. One of the things that we really have trouble with right now is the restrooms in the stadium are insufficient. They're really old, really nasty. Okay. The ones inside the gym, they're just not big enough. For the ladies, there's 4 stalls. Okay. What we're proposing is to take this area, convert it into a new concessions area that would serve both indoor and outdoor. So we could do it for football games and we could do it for basketball. There would be a balcony on the outside so that you could have access to it. There would be larger restrooms that would serve both the gyms and the stadium that again would have interior access, so for winter events, volleyball, basketball, those type of things. But it would also have an exterior entrance for track and football. And then we would have an athletic office down here that would also serve the needs of the athletic department and the activities department back and forth. So those would be enhancements that would really benefit both the stadium and the benefit the things on the inside of the building. We are now in the elementary school, and I want to highlight just a few of the challenges that we're facing in this building. One of the big issues is we're running out of space. When this building was built in the 1980s, one of the things, we didn't have preschool at that time. Over here to the right, we have now 3 classrooms that are being used for preschool. They're being used every day for that. So those were not used at the time. The other big issue that we're running into is we have an increased need for special needs students for special education. And a lot of those students are working one-on-one with paraprofessionals throughout the course of the day on specific academic issues. Well, we've run out of places for them to work with those individual students. So a lot of times what you'll see is students actually sitting at these lunch tables with a paraprofessional. When you've got kids walking up and down the hallway transitioning between classes, it's really not a good learning environment for a student who's already struggling academically. So we find kids a lot of times in the hallways. There's some benches that we'll find a student and a paraprofessional working at because all other available space is taken up. So those are some of the things that in the proposed solutions we'll be able to address some of that. One of the other big challenges right here in the cafeteria area is the music room behind me, which was originally a stage. It can still be opened up with a stage. We have movable partitions on both walls. The problem with that, or the challenge with that, is the sound very easily goes through those walls. So when they're trying to have class out there and there's a lunch period going on in here, the noise from the lunch period interferes with music class. The other side of the music room is the gymnasium. And when there's kids in there running around, screaming, playing, having fun like they're supposed to do, that noise also bleeds back and forth. The music teacher talks about frequently, she ends up having to take kids outside because there's testing and other things going on that make it difficult for them to have class. This is an example of one of the spaces that our special education students, when they take state testing and other things, they'll come into this room because we're out of additional space anywhere else. So they'll come in here and this is where they'll take their test and do some of those things that are required by the state. As you can see, this room is very small. There's probably 36 square feet of space in here at the most, which would probably be uncomfortable for a lot of those students to be confined in this area. We are now in what area is the primary storm shelter for the elementary school. This hallway is about 6 feet by 18 feet wide, or 18 feet long. Regulations call for about 5 square feet per person in a storm shelter. We think that's, with our elementary age students, 5 is quite a bit. So we kind of figured on about 3 to 4 square foot per person. Between this hallway and the usable space in the men's and women's restrooms right here, we could get about 100 students safely into this area. On an average day, we have between 350 and 375 students and adults in this building. So about 1 out of every 3 could get into this storm shelter. The other storm shelter area that we use are classrooms that have windows exposed to them, but that's the safest other locations that we have. The proposed solution that we have would take this area, which would extend a hallway out, and we would build classrooms and storm shelters and things on the north side of the gym. Just to kind of get you where we are, we're right beside the gymnasium at this time. So we would have 2 floors back here. The bottom level would be 3 levels or 3 classrooms. They would be multi-purpose instructional classrooms. They would be used for various purposes. It would be a place to take students that need to work individually. It'd be a place, we'd have one room that was very large to take large groups of kids. So if we wanted to have a group presentation, we would now have a place to do that. But all 3 of those rooms would serve as storm shelters. It would allow us to get every student, every adult in this building could be housed in those 3 rooms safely, built for that purpose, okay? It makes sense while we're in that same area to go ahead and put a second story on here as well. We can add 2 additional classrooms and a new computer lab up there, which will also allow us more space to work with individual students. And it will also allow us to move the computer lab that's currently in the library to a new location, which would also allow us to expand the library space. All right, this is the media center of the elementary school, and this is the computer lab area, which is currently taking up about 1/4 of the space here in the library. Again, the proposed solution would have a computer room that's much larger that would allow us to have that access out there for the students, but it would also allow us to access and create more space in here for the students to be with books, to be with different programs and things in the library. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us looking through our buildings. We think this is a very important issue for the future of our kids and the future of our community. The election day is scheduled for November 3rd. Advanced voting begins on October 14th. That would take place 2 different ways. You can go by the county courthouse and go to the county clerk's office and vote anytime between October 14th and noon on November 2nd. Or you can request a mail ballot from the county clerk and they will mail that out to you. If you have any questions about anything that you've seen today or anything else that you've heard in the paper, anything like that, feel free to contact me at the district office. The number is 785-562-5308. I'll be glad to answer your questions. We just think it's really important and we hope you get out to vote. Thank you.